So morning, year eight. I'm going to be giving you some very short video introductions to your lessons this half term on behalf of all your other teachers. Okay. Um, this is going to be a really interesting topic for you guys. It's not one that we taught for very long at Hampstead, but I think it's one that you're really going to enjoy. So all I'm going to do today is give you a very short introduction to what you're going to be looking at this half term. And at the end of it, you're going to have a little bit of research to do. Okay, so you're going to have a short research homework to complete. This is just going to be a short introduction. Okay, so first of all, what are we going to be looking at this half term? Okay, so you've got 4 statues just on your screen there. Now, I want you just to have a think for yourself for a minute. Just look at all the details for each one. 2 questions, and we'll find out in a few minutes whether you managed to get this right or not. Right, first question. I want to know what you think these people might have in common. And then secondly, who do you think might be the odd one out and why? So just take a few seconds, look at all 4 statues. What do you think they might have in common? And then who do you think is the odd one out and why? Okay, so hopefully got a guess in mind now. Might recognize one of these people. I think a lot of you probably know who this person is. Okay, so let's find out a little bit more about each of these people and these statues before we think about what they've got in common. Okay, now the first person, this guy just over here in the bottom left, is a famous French revolutionary called the Abbé Grégoire. Now, Abbé Grégoire was a senior priest within the church in France, but he was also a supporter of the French Revolution. So he was a Catholic priest, but he was a leader during the French Revolution. And what Abbé Grégoire is most famous for was his opposition to slavery. So in France, he started a group called the Society of the Friends of the Blacks, and they campaigned to abolish slavery within France's empire. So at the time of the French Revolution, France had lots of colonies where there were slaves, and Abbé Grégoire was famous because he campaigned to end slavery through the Society of the Friends of the Blacks. One of his most famous quotes, which is underneath this statue over here, is "Mortals are equal. It is not birth, but virtue alone that makes the difference." Okay, so he believed in the idea that people were born equal at birth, and it was your virtue, your character, that made a difference. Okay, so a famous campaigner against slavery in France's empire. Now, the second person on there, probably quite a few of you did know or recognized at least, was Abraham Lincoln. Okay, now Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. He's most famous because he was the leader who led the northern parts of the United States to victory against the southern parts of the United States, also known as the Confederacy, in America's Civil War. So from 1861 to 1865, the northern states of America fought the southern states of America, largely over whether slavery would be allowed to continue existing. At the end of that Civil War, the North defeated the South and slavery was ended. And slavery was ended formally in 1865 when an amendment was passed to America's Constitution, which made it illegal to have slaves. And that meant that legally, the 4 million black slaves in America at that point became free. So Lincoln has become a sort of great symbol of the abolition of slavery in America. He's on the $5 banknote you can see down there, and some of you probably recognize this gentleman here as well. This is Martin Luther King. When he made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech in 1963, sorry, he decided to do it on the Lincoln Memorial in America, so where this statue is, because he wanted to draw a parallel between Lincoln's struggle against slavery in the Civil War with African American struggle for freedom during the Civil Rights Movement 100 years later. So again, Lincoln was a great inspiration to Martin Luther King. I just have this picture here. I want to have a little think about what does this painting suggest about how African people in America got their freedom. Okay. Now, if we look in this picture, we've got clearly some people over here who are slaves because of the clothes they're wearing, the fact they're bare feet. We can see Lincoln here is standing up. He points towards the sky, pointing towards God, and they're clearly thanking him for helping them to end slavery and maybe Lincoln is possibly thanking God as well as taking their appreciation. But clearly, the idea in this picture is that it was due to Abraham Lincoln that African people got their freedom in America. And we'll come back to that idea in a minute. And the third statue on there is actually of an English politician, a very famous one called William Wilberforce. Okay, now William Wilberforce was an MP, and he was most famous because he was one of the key leaders of a movement in the UK called the abolitionists. Okay, now remember, to abolish something means to get rid of it, and the abolitionists were campaigning to get rid of the slave trade in the UK. So from 1604 to 1807, 3.1 million African people were kidnapped and taken into slavery by British traders who would go to Africa, have slaves kidnapped, and then carry them across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean or America, where they'd be made slaves. So Britain was involved in the trading of slaves for nearly 200 years until it was abolished in 1807, and the slave trade was finally abolished. Okay. Now, this statue of William Wilberforce, if you ever go to Parliament Square, so you can see this is Big Ben, Houses of Parliament over here, and then you can see over here, this is Westminster Hall, okay, Westminster Abbey, most famous church in central London. Now, this statue is inside Westminster Hall as a commemoration to William Wilberforce, but it has a description underneath it, which has been controversial with some people. Now, what does it say? Now, it says about Wilberforce, his name will ever be specially identified with those whose work, which by the blessing of God removed from England the guilt of the African slave trade and prepared the way for the abolition of slavery in every colony of the empire. Now, why has that quote proved controversial? Now, no one denies that Wilberforce did play a key role in the abolitionist movement to help abolish the slave trade in Britain. But the part that some people have found very controversial is it says that by doing that, he removed from England the guilt of the African slave trade. Now, some of you might have noticed from that, well, the reason why might people not be happy with that? Well, because it's the idea that, well, just because of the actions of the abolitionists and William Wilberforce, the guilt of the slave trade would just be ended like that, like it was at that point, always forgiven. And some people have found that very controversial, and think that diminishes Britain's responsibility for what it did during the slave trade. And again, what else does that quote suggest about why African slaves got their freedom? Well, it suggests again that very much like Lincoln, it was due to the actions of white abolitionists. So Wilberforce in the case of Britain, Lincoln in the case of America, and Abbe Gregoire in the case of France. Now, going back to our four statues again, now, what all four of these people have in common is they were all famous leaders who helped to abolish slavery in the New World. Now, the person who's the odd one out is actually this person down here, for reasons we'll find out in a minute. Now, before I tell you a bit more about this man, right, so if you have a look at that picture just quickly, just to yourself in your head, you don't have to write these down. Where do you think the statue might be? And then why do you think this man might be famous? So have a look at some of the details in the picture. Just have a quick look at it. So where do you think it is? And why do you think he might be famous? Okay, so you had a few seconds to think about that now. So if we just have a look again, now in terms of where it might be, so some of you might have spotted, if you're being sharp-eyed, looking at the background, well, this looks like almost like palm leaves, so maybe it's somewhere tropical, so maybe we're talking about Africa or the Caribbean, possibly. Maybe it's in Europe, who knows? Now, in terms of why he might be famous, now, if we look at just the statue itself, okay, now, the first thing to probably note is the fact that there's a statue of him probably suggests he's someone of some importance, right? Because you don't just make statues about people who haven't, accomplished great or important things. Also, we notice the way he's standing. Okay, he's standing very upright. He looks very powerful. He's holding a sword. So some of you probably picked out the idea, well, that probably suggests he was some kind of military leader. And again, his sort of cloak he's wearing probably suggests he's someone of very high status, so maybe some sort of leader. Now, where is that statue? And if you look in the video, a couple of the videos just after this one in the playlist, you can see a little bit about where the statue is precisely. But this statue is actually in Haiti. Okay. Now, for those of you who don't know, Haiti is a country in the Caribbean. It's just south of the United States. So if you look up here, you've got Florida in the USA, Cuba over here, and it's just to the east of Jamaica. So it's one of the nearest Caribbean islands to Jamaica. It's roughly about the size of Wales. So if you're thinking about it, comparing it to the UK, Haiti is about the size of Wales, and its population today is just over 10 million people. Okay. Now the statue itself is opposite Haiti's national parliament in its capital, Port-au-Prince. Okay. Now that is quite significant, right? Because it's opposite their parliament. In the UK, if you ever go to Parliament Square, some of you might have done this before, you'll notice that we have Winston Churchill opposite our national parliament. Now, why do we have Winston Churchill outside our parliament? Well, because he was clearly someone who many British people see as one of our most important leaders, most famous for leading Britain during World War II to victory against Nazi Germany in 1945. So the Haitian people to have a statue of this man opposite their parliament, like, clearly shows that he must be someone of great significance to their history. Now, the person that we're going to be starting off learning about today is Toussaint Louverture. So he is the man depicted in that statue. Now, your work for this half term is we're going to be looking at what Haiti did to help abolish slavery. Okay, so our big inquiry question for this half term is going to be, what credit is Haiti owed for the sacrifices it made to abolish slavery? So we're going to be looking at what Toussaint Louverture and the people of Haiti did to help abolish slavery. Now, you've just got a very short bit of research to do this week. Okay. Now, the first thing is that you've got a little worksheet, which I'll just go through in a minute. I want you just to watch, and the video is the next one in the playlist, okay? You've got a very short video clip about what Toussaint achieved, okay? Now, all I want you to do is to just watch that clip, and you're going to write down 3 things that it mentions that he achieved. I would suggest watch the video twice because it's very short, and try and pull out 3 achievements that Toussaint had. Okay, so this is just going to be a starting off lesson. Now, if you go on to show my homework, right, you'll find you've got this fact file sheet, okay, on Toussaint Louverture. So if you can print this, great. That's probably the best thing to do. So just print this off and then you can fill it in, take a picture of it, send it to your teacher. If not, you can complete it online as a PowerPoint. And if you don't have access to either of those things, you can just answer these questions, okay, which I'll put on to show my homework for you as well. But if you can print off the worksheet, this is what you're going to be finding out. So from that short video clip, you're going to find out 3 things that Toussaint Louverture achieved. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3 things that he achieved, okay? You've then got a very short article to read, and I want you to read it and find out 6 key facts for me. So I want to know when Toussaint was born. So what year was he born? Where was he born? So what country or colony in this case was he born into? What do we know about Toussaint's father, who he was, and what Toussaint's early life was like? I then want you to tell me Saint-Domingue, which was later renamed Haiti, which country had it been a colony of? So who had Saint-Domingue / Haiti belong to when it was a colony? So which European country controlled it? You're then going to find out for me when Toussaint had been a slave, what education he received. So what do we know about the kind of education he'd received as a slave? And then after the slave rebellion in Haiti began in 1791, what did Toussaint do? So you can find out all of those questions in response to an article, which I'll just quickly show you through in a minute. And then this one at the bottom, just a challenge. What else can you find out about Toussaint? So maybe 5 other key facts, anything you like, 5 other key facts that you managed to find out about Toussaint. Do more than 5 if you want to, though. Okay, so just for this one, as many other things as you can tell me about Toussaint, his life, who he was, why he's famous, why he's significant. Okay, so see how many of you can find out for that one as well. Now, the articles you're going to find these questions from, okay, is you've got nice short one here. So this is the one you need to find all 6 of those main questions. This is the only one you need to have a look through. So again, very short. Link are going to be in the video description. You're going to be going to the description for the YouTube video. The link will be in there, and you can also find it on Share My Homework. If you want to challenge yourself a bit or find out a bit more, because again, it's a good topic, this one, you've also got an article from The Guardian, which is slightly more challenging. And this is telling you a little bit more detail about Toussaint's life, who he was, and why he was famous. Okay, so that's a little bit of an extension for some of you. So give that a read, see what else you can find out about Toussaint and why he's seen as someone of great significance and importance. Okay, so once you have done all of that then, so you've done your research, you're going to have either that worksheet completed and filled in. You can do that electronically or you can handwrite it, send it back to your teacher. If you can't print that off, just answer the same questions just on a little bit of paper, and you can just take a picture and send that to your teacher instead. Okay, so for Friday you need to have this fact file completed using those 2 articles and these first 3 points using the video, and then next week we're going to be going an introduction to the Haitian Revolution, why it started and where it was. Okay, so thank you very much. You're right.